The water between the fronds is the color it should not be. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would register in a photograph taken from a helicopter at the right angle, in the right light, for the right brochure. But stand at the edge of one of the inner bays of Palm Jumeirah on a still morning, look down, and the color is wrong. Greenish where it should be clear. Slow where it should move. The smell, on certain days, is the smell of water that has nowhere to go. Palm Jumeirah is 20 years old, and the engineering problem that nobody mentioned in any of the original promotional materials is becoming, quietly and measurably, the defining feature of daily life on the island that was supposed to redefine luxury forever. Dubai built Palm Jumeirah on a simple and spectacular premise. The city had run out of prime coastline close to the center. So it made more. Between 2001 and 2006, Nakheel dredged approximately 94 million cubic meters of sand from the floor of the Arabian Gulf and deposited it in the shape of a palm tree, surrounded by an 11-kilometer crescent breakwater designed to protect the new land from the open sea. The result added roughly 50 kilometers of new beachfront to Dubai's geography, instantly multiplying the supply of waterfront real estate in the most valuable zone of the city. The fronds, 16 of them, each lined with villas directly on the water, sold at prices that reflected the promise of something that had never existed before. Private beach access in one of the fastest-growing cities on Earth. A postcode that announced, in its GPS coordinates alone, that you had arrived somewhere. What the promotional materials did not model was what would happen to the water inside the crescent once the breakwater was in place. The crescent was built to protect. That is its function, and it performs it. The 11 kilometers of rock armor, graded and positioned by crane and verified by diver, stand between the inner lagoons of the Palm and the open Gulf, absorbing wave energy, reducing storm impact, making the water behind it calmer and safer for the buildings it protects. But calm water and safe water are not the same thing. In an open coastal environment, water moves. Tides push it. Currents redistribute it. The natural circulation of the Gulf flushes and replenishes the water column continuously, maintaining the oxygen levels and salinity balance that keep marine ecosystems functional and water quality acceptable. The crescent of Palm Jumeirah interrupts that circulation. The water inside the inner bays, particularly in the narrower channels between the fronds furthest from the main entry points, turns over far more slowly than the open Gulf water outside it. What enters those channels, from rainfall runoff, from the urban surface of the island itself, from the boats and jet skis of 20 years of intensive residential use, accumulates faster than natural processes can remove it. This is not a hypothesis. Researchers studying the hydrodynamics of Palm Jumeirah's inner lagoons have documented reduced water exchange rates in the bays between the outer fronds, where the geometry of the crescent and the frond layout creates the lowest circulation. The consequence, in marine terms, is elevated nutrient loading, reduced dissolved oxygen, and the conditions that favor algal growth over the clear water visibility the original renders implied. The issue has been visible in the satellite record for years, to anyone who knows what color healthy enclosed bay water looks like from above. It looks different from what the inner bays of Palm Jumeirah show on a windless summer day. Here is what makes this structurally significant rather than merely aesthetic. The villas on the inner frond bays, the ones most affected by the circulation problem, were sold on the explicit promise of private beach access and waterfront living. The water is still there. The beach is still there. But the experience of that water, the thing the buyer was purchasing when they paid a premium for direct lagoon frontage, has degraded in a way that was predictable from the physics of the design and was not communicated in any sales document produced by Nakheel between 2001 and 2007. And the island has another 20 years of this ahead of it, because the circulation problem is not something that can be fixed by maintenance. It is not a pipe that can be replaced or a pump that can be upgraded. It is a consequence of the geometry. The crescent is where it is. The fronds are where they are. The water moves the way the physics of that arrangement dictates it moves. Short of structural modifications to the breakwater at a scale and cost that no current development plan has budgeted for, the inner bay water quality of Palm Jumeirah will continue to follow the trajectory it has been on since the crescent was completed in 2006. Have you ever purchased something expensive and realized some years later that the depreciation was not in the object itself, but in the invisible infrastructure around it? The residents who raised these concerns earliest were not journalists or environmentalists. They were homeowners who had paid $8, $10, $12 million for a villa with a private jetty on an inner bay, and who noticed incrementally that the water their children were swimming in on the weekends looked different than the water in the promotional video they had watched before signing the contract. Their complaints entered the public record through homeowner association minutes, through property forums, through the kind of documentation that does not appear in press releases, but that accumulates over time into an evidentiary record that is difficult to ignore. What is harder to quantify, but equally real, is what 20 years of this has done to the secondary property market on the inner fronds. Palm Jumeirah as an address retains its global recognition. The Atlantis Hotel at the top of the crescent is still one of the most photographed structures in the Gulf. The outer frond villas with open sea views and better water access still command prices that reflect genuine demand. But the inner bay properties, the ones most exposed to the circulation problem, have shown a pattern in secondary market transactions that property analysts covering Dubai have noted without always naming the cause directly. Resale timelines in certain frond locations run longer than comparable Dubai waterfront addresses. Price adjustments between listing and sale in specific bay-facing configurations and suggest a buyer pool that is pricing in something the original sales did not acknowledge. The island is also aging in ways that any 20-year-old piece of urban infrastructure ages, but with complications specific to its construction method and location. The utilities beneath Palm Jumeirah, the water supply lines, the sewage infrastructure, the electrical conduits, run through ground that was reclaimed from the Gulf seabed and vibro-compacted to resist liquefaction. That ground has been settling for 2 decades. Settlement is not uniform across a structure of this scale. Roads on the island show the evidence of differential settlement in ways that residents document and that maintenance crews address on a continuous basis. The underground infrastructure faces the same stresses in a salt-rich environment, with Gulf humidity levels that accelerate the corrosion of materials that were state-of-the-art in 2002, but are now approaching the end of their designed service life. None of this is unique to Palm Jumeirah. Every piece of urban infrastructure ages. Every coastal city faces the maintenance burden of salt and humidity and time. What is specific to Palm Jumeirah is that this aging is happening to an artificial structure that has no natural precedent for comparison, that was built on a timeline and at a scale driven by real estate economics rather than engineering conservatism, and that sits in a body of water whose temperature has been rising consistently since the island was completed. The Gulf is warming. Average sea surface temperatures in the Arabian Gulf have increased measurably over the past 2 decades, with direct consequences for the marine environment that Palm Jumeirah's inner bays are already struggling to support. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. Lower dissolved oxygen accelerates the eutrophication process that elevated nutrient loading from the island's surface runoff is already promoting. The water quality trajectory that the circulation problem set in motion is being accelerated by a climatic variable that the 2001 master plan had no reason to model at current rates. The breakwater that protects the island was built with sea level projections in mind. Dubai's engineers are not naive about the Gulf, but the projections informing Palm Jumeirah's design in 2001 were the projections available in 2001. The science since then has not moved in a reassuring direction. The crescent that was designed to protect the island from the Gulf may need, within the island's commercial lifespan, to be itself protected from a Gulf that is higher, warmer, and more energetically unpredictable than the one that existed when the sand was first deposited? This is the question that the 20-year anniversary of Palm Jumeirah's completion does not answer, and that nobody with a financial interest in the island's continued desirability has an incentive to ask publicly. At what point does the cost of maintaining an aging artificial island in a warming Gulf exceed the economic value of the real estate it carries? Not tomorrow, not in 5 years. But the calculation exists. It will need to be made. And unlike the infrastructure of a conventional city, which sits on natural land that predates the buildings above it by geological timescales, Palm Jumeirah's foundation is a deliberate human construction with a construction date and, therefore, an age. The sand beneath the villas was placed there by a pipeline in the early 2000s. It is not old in the way that coastlines are old. It is new in the way that decisions are new. And decisions, unlike coastlines, can be revisited. The water between the fronds is the color it should not be. And the question that color is asking has a timeline attached to it that no promotional material for any property on Palm Jumeirah has ever specified. What gets built on a promise inherits the promise's limitations, and water eventually always finds the lowest point. If you live on Palm Jumeirah, or you know someone who does, tell us in the comments whether what you were sold matches what you are living with now.